Welcome. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for our EDIB recruitment panel discussion. We've got some outstanding women joining us on stage today who I will briefly intro, but let them introduce themselves properly because they will do a better job. So firstly, we've got Scarlett Allen-Horton, Gaelle Blake, Ceri Evans, and Carol Massay. Scarlett, do you want to give yourself an intro?
Is the mic on? Hello, can everyone hear me? Hi. So my name is Scarlett Allen-Horton. I am the founder of Harper Search Partners, which is an executive search firm focused on placing diverse talent within the STEM and construction industries. I'm business partners with Lord Sugar.
Good girl.
Apprentice finalist.
Unlike me.
And I'm also the EDI ambassador for the UK for the Recruitment Employment Confederation. Nice. Thank you.
Gaelle?
That was loud. Gaelle Blake, I am the UK Non-Director for Construction and Property for Hayes, sponsor of the Women in Construction Awards, which was amazing. I also look after all permanent appointments for Hayes for UK and Ireland across all sectors as well.
Hi everyone, I am Ceri Evans. I'm Regional Director for Betchel Limited, so we're the largest privately owned construction company in the US. I currently look after contracts and procurement and all the associated people across UK, Ireland, Europe, Africa and Middle East for our infrastructure business. So that's anything from heavy civils to major public infrastructure, rail, aviation, water, renewables and that kind of stuff. So all of our people, process, prospects and projects within that umbrella.
Hi, I'm Carol Massay, Head of Construction at the Access Group. I'm also a non-executive director for Build My Talent, which is a construction recruitment panel, and the CEO is here this afternoon as well. So I've been in construction over 35 years, worked in construction, and in the last 25 years, I've been working on the construction tech side. I'm looking forward to this afternoon's discussion.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Right, okay, so I'm going to read this because I've not remembered it. As companies increasingly recognise the importance of EDIB in the workplace, it is important to understand the best practices and benefits of promoting benefits of promoting EDIB within the recruitment process. This is particularly relevant in the UK construction industry, which has historically struggled with lack of diversity and inclusion. We're going to be speaking to our experts today to learn more about how we can do this ourselves, what problems they've faced, and basically how they've overcome them as experts. So firstly, I'll come to Scarlett. How can UK construction companies incorporate EDIB principles into the recruitment process from job postings and outreach to interviewing and selection?
Thank you. That's a very, very big question. There's lots of different ways, and I think sometimes it's good to offer some quite practical tips. So we know obviously about gender decoders, I'm assuming. Yay? Nay? No? Anything from the audience?
Enlighten us.
Yes. Okay. So, for example, when you're running a job spec or a job advert through, before posting it, run it through a gender decoder, because what we typically find is that female candidates can align better maybe with softer language, and male candidates can sometimes be the opposite. We also know that in terms of specs and advertisements, we need to keep them a little bit broad. The more specific we go, the more likely we are to rule women particularly. And we are generalising here, but the research does back it out, because what you tend to find is a lot of our female candidates will apply for something that they 100% fit the spec on. And our male counterparts, and this is something that they do so wonderfully, are more open to something that's 60 to 70% them. So naturally, you're going to have more male candidates that apply for a role. So that's a little bit. I won't take over. But something else that's really important is that we really advocate and have diverse interview panels. So if you're interviewing in the business, make sure that actually that panel is inclusive and reflective of the types of people that you'd really like to encourage into your business as well. Values are super important. It's all very well when we talk about, hey, we want women in the business, we want more people that are neurodivergent, more black people in the business, for example. But the reality is that we need to make sure that when bringing these people into the organisation, that they're in a culture that's really supportive and that's going to enable that talent to really thrive within the business as well. So we need to understand what's happening in the business, what are the values, and what support needs to be put into place to make sure it's a really healthy and thrivership culture.
Scarlett, sorry, I know you're not prepared for this question, but when you said, have like a panel, a diverse panel that reflects that, what if you don't have that? Like, what can we do?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And that's when I'd say, let's reach out to industry colleagues, let's reach out to some peers. Let's look at even maybe some counterparts that are in the organisation that might be a little bit more junior. And actually, if appropriate, there has to be an appropriability level. And if that is the case, a really good thing to do as well is if, for example, Michaela's more senior than me, I'm more junior. If Michaela says her opinion about a candidate, I'm probably going to be influenced by it because she's the big boss. But actually, if she writes her feedback down, I write my feedback down, so it's both blind, and then we give that to the HR manager, or we all look at it. We're coming from a place that actually isn't maybe influencing bias as well in terms of seniority.
Brilliant. Thanks, Scarlett. Well done. Gaelle, over to you.
Obviously what she just said, which was really good. I also think it's about the journey that you have before you start advertising the job. So any candidate is going to research you before they apply for the job. So they're going to see the job, then they're going to research you. So what is your story on social media? So you just mentioned, Scarlett, all about values, but are your values really out there, and can you evidence them, and can you give examples of it? We can all say that we care about DEIB. We can all say it. It can stay on a whiteboard in a meeting room. But how do you bring it to life? Now, I'm sure that all of you will have examples of how you bring it to life. That is what needs to go on social media. That is what needs to be your story. Because people won't even, never mind the job ad, no one will apply for it if they don't really believe you mean it. And what they want to see is data, evidence, and examples. If not, it's just your opinion that you are ED&I friendly. So bring it to life, and I think that's really, really important. I think everything Scarlett said was spot on. I think finally what I would say is know your privilege. So we all have privilege. Even I'm sitting here as, although I'm a woman, I'm a straight white woman, therefore I have privilege. I was in education. English is my first language. Therefore, I know that gives me certain amounts of power and privilege. It's also important to know we don't all start at the same place. Some of us start, if you think about a race, some of us start because of our privilege in a place that is ahead of others. So accepting and understanding your privilege and giving that power that you have in your privilege to understand not everyone else has the same lived experience as you, that means that you will be more open-minded. And I have to say, the people sitting here on the panel before, what I loved about some of the people at panel was they were talking openly and accepting of their own privilege and understanding that privilege. And if you can, even better, play it forward and give it to someone else. So that's what she said plus.
Brilliant. Thanks, Gaelle. And Ceri, over to you.
So I can maybe give a bit of an insight from the other side of the lens. So my role, I'm not a recruiter, but I work very closely with our talent acquisition teams, and we do have diverse panels. But one thing for me that's super important is being really clear about that brief from the outset, that candidate that you want. So to give a bit of an example, recently I was trying to hire for one of our Balkans motorway jobs. This was a really hardcore camp job in the middle of Macedonia, essentially. The top candidate was this amazing woman who'd spent the last 4 years in Mongolia. She'd just got married. So what she really wanted was to have a bit of flex for the first time in her life. But the brief, no matter how forward we'd been with our advertising, how much we had said we wanted someone diverse in that role, it just didn't match her aspirations. So when putting together briefs, what we need to think is, how was this affected during the bidding stage? How was this affected during going out to tender and how we tendered that job? How are clients thinking about, how do we shape these bids in order to influence recruitment? Because otherwise, ultimately, we just can't afford the flex. One, financially, and two, when you've got 90% white middle-aged men who are quite happy to go sit on a camp job and one amazing woman asking for some flex, it suddenly becomes really difficult to set those precedents. So I would say make sure the brief at the very outset can match the aspirations.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Ceri. Carol, I'm sure you've got loads to say on this.
Yeah, I have, and really just, concurring with what the other ladies have said. I'm in a minority. I've been in construction over 35 years, and in terms of, other people looking like me, speaking like me, there was no one like that. So just going back to the point, in terms of recruitment, the employee is now looking and setting the bar high in terms of what they're looking for. So culturally, an organisation has to tick the boxes for the employee when they're looking for the jobs. It's not the other way around. So, if you're an employee, you need to be looking, an employer, you've got to be looking that you're not just doing a tick box exercise. And we all say it has to be the right person for the job. And it's not a point of, well, actually, we've only got 3 female, the next one has to be, we've got 3 men, the next role needs to be a female that fills it. And by the way, we haven't got a black person in that role or an Asian person or somebody that's LGBTQ. It's got to be a fair and even way of actually recruiting. And this is the thing, with construction, we've kept on saying that we have some massive gaps to fill in. And the thing is, we've got to do it in a credible way. We've got to be advertising in the way. The language in terms of the recruitment has to be fair and equal for everyone to feel that, I can go and apply for this role. And I'm not going to feel that I'm going to be, stigmatized because, I've got to go and have prayer session, or actually I've got dreadlocks in my hair, or I look different. You've got to be able to say, well, I can actually do that job and I can tick those boxes.
Amazing. Thanks, Carol. So the next question, I guess, is 2 questions in one. What are the benefits of promoting EDIB in the recruitment process for UK construction companies? And how does having a diverse and inclusive workforce impact the industry's overall success and competitiveness? Carol, I'm going to come back to you.
I keep on saying this, and I say it on social media, diversity grows businesses, right? So having a room of white male in general, having opinions is not going to make cultural changes. You've got to make sure that everybody has an opportunity and mixing up the boardroom, ensuring that everyone can have the opportunity to have the voice at the table. One of the struggles that I had was, being in construction, I was the person at the end of the phone when I've been speaking to those tier 1 contractors for weeks, for months. The minute I turned up at the meeting, opened the boardroom door, it was like that eerie moment. Oh my God, she's black, right? She's black, but she understands the sector. So for me, it was, quite challenging. So it's all about ensuring that, you have visibility of how you can bring people into the business. If you Google some of these tier 1 contractors, what faces do you see at the board? On social media, so you're trying to attract a diverse community into construction at different levels. But when people Google your businesses and look at the About You page, you're not demonstrating it. So it starts there. And it has to be a cultural shift to allow people to know that they can join a company and feel part of the cultural change.
Brill, thanks, Carol. And Scarlett, what are you saying?
So a couple of things, I think that was a fantastic point, but a couple of things also to add to that. The first thing is that we really need our white male counterparts, because I think there's a conversation where I've then seen in those rooms where those white males who are dominant within the industry are sort of like, oh, this feels a bit awkward. And actually, a lot of those white males are people that have really encouraged females and minorities into our sector. And quite honestly, it's those individuals that we're going to rely on to be our greatest allies and our greatest sponsors. And those are the individuals, alongside all of us, that are part of different marginalised groups, that need to be advocating for the amazing talent and the achievements of others that aren't in those rooms where decisions are being made. So I think that's one thing that's really important. And when we drive that, we do see this real cultural and truly inclusive change. Regards EDI, there's a lot of people that are fully on board. And you know what? There's lots of people that aren't. And I see it on a day-to-day. And that, you know what? That's okay. The best way that I always think to get everyone on board, especially when we're talking about business, is that we know that businesses are 36% typically more profitable when they have a diverse team. So if you want your business to be more engaged, your people to be happier, and you want to make more money, then you need a diverse team. So that's a quick and easy way, I think, to look at it.
Yeah, do you know what, Scarlett? I'm sorry, I'm going to come back to you again, but I love what you're saying, and I know this is factually correct, and it's what I always talk about, the money, because as a business owner, ultimately, that's all we care about. But why is that? Why does it increase the bottom line profits?
I think because you're bringing different perspectives to the table. And Gaelle, you made a great point. We're not just talking about ethnicity here or, disability or sexuality. Actually, we're talking about people that maybe haven't always gone to Oxford or Cambridge and maybe went to the local college or didn't at all. We're bringing different life experiences, different perspectives to the table, and in doing so, we're bringing different solutions. That's the reality. And with different solutions, then we can drive a business forward in a different way. How do you outbeat your competitors? By doing things differently. It's simple as that. So your team needs to also reflect that.
Brilliant, thanks. And sorry, I know I keep just throwing you under the bus, but I know you're going to be great, Scarlett. You can handle it. Gaelle, I'll come to you as well. Same question.
I think, as Scarlett said, of course, what you get is a more diverse range of opinions. You get better outcomes because you're all thinking in different ways. You have to be a very, very empathetic person to understand something if it's not your lived experience. So actually bringing a diverse range of people, what you're doing is bringing their history, their values, what they've lived. And what they will do is give lived experience. So, for example, if you are looking to bring more women into the workplace, for example, have a think about your car parking facilities. Are they dark at night? When half the year it is dark, isn't it, after 5 o'clock? Are you thinking about what their lived experience will be in that car park? Is it well lit? Could you change that? If you want more neurodiverse people, is your office genuinely built in a way that gives them a place where they can be quiet? Because they may need to concentrate. Maybe the lighting isn't quite as bright. So there are things, and that's why having a diverse range of people, and I loved what you said, you were almost saying it's like, why does it that a board needs to be the most experienced people? Why can't you have guest or almost 360 mentoring when you get other people's opinions on certain things? Because that's how you encourage. It's often the little things that encourage people into the workplace. It is about the values, but it's also about showing that you mean it. I work with, we know so many organisations who do mean it and they do it, and those who just have a strategy on a whiteboard. And there's a big difference. But often it is the little things, I think, that can make a difference in a diverse workplace.
So, Gaelle, I was actually just going to chuck in a random question for you and Scarlett, because you both obviously work at recruitment agencies. I wonder, and feel free to be open and whistleblow on this, how many people say that they want this, but actually when you get there, they're not ready for this, they just want it because, it's the latest trend, EDIB, women in construction, and how many of them can you then educate on actually why it's important and this is why you should be doing it? And are there just any horror stories of this, I don't want to work with this company because they're full of it?
I think the reality of it is that nowadays, because of social media, because of things like Glassdoor, people can figure out whether you mean it even before they step foot into an interview. So I think ultimately anybody will do their research on you. Everyone will do research, wouldn't you? I would. This is a place I'm going to have to spend more time at work than I do with my 3 kids. I will research you. So I think the beautiful thing about social media is it's very easy. There's things like Glassdoor. You can see whether they mean it or not. As Carol said, Everyone can say, I've got really high EDIB standards. If you have a look at all their social media pictures of them on an outing, and there isn't one mention of the alliances. So what I would look for, at anyone here who's thinking about, changing employers and looking, look for alliances. Do they have a women's network? Do they have an LGBTQ network? Do they have a BAME network? That tells you straight away, do they mean it? Do they really mean it about actually moving things forward? So I actually think most employers genuinely do want to do it. I think what they want is more practical tips. How do I bring this to life? And I think it's about, if you don't have a diverse range of people at the moment, speak to people, as Scarlett said, outside. There's lots of people in your networks. You can use it through the professional institutions. A lot of the professional institutions have been here today. And I would go there and ask their opinions. But ultimately, make sure that it's for real, because people will figure you straight out. And if they do join you, they'll leave very quickly.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And Scarlett, have you had any horror stories where people pretend?
Yes. And worse than that, are very clear with what kind of talent they want, which has always baffled me. And I think actually it's great often when we're in big businesses, they're doing and saying the right things generally. However, in smaller businesses, I think it can be very, very different. And I think that's a reality. And what I would say a really great way, I think, for us to empower ourselves is when you're in an interview process, that company is not just interviewing you, you're interviewing them. So ask them what have they done, what's tangible, how have they brought diversity to the industry, if that's something that's important to you, how are they encouraging the females, what's been the succession rate within the business with female talent, what's the development plans for me, because then you know then what's happening and whether that company is for you or not. So yeah, but I've been on site. I'm a female woman, I'm ethnic minority, I'm mixed race, and I've categorically had clients tell me women don't work in the business. I had a couple of directors. I had this a couple of weeks ago, I'm kidding you not. I had a couple of directors, they were female. They're just no good, so I don't think it's a fit for me. I mean, can you imagine, my face? But yeah, that's why these conversations are so
would have
important.
rolled, Scarlett, if I was there. But you're far more amicable than me. I'll move on to the next question. I'll come to you, Ceri. What role can education and training play in promoting EDIB in the UK construction industry? And are there any specific programmes or initiatives that have been shown to be effective in this regard?
Yes. So, excellent question, which I first answered probably back in 2002 when I worked at the Institution of Civil Engineers. So, at that point, I actually started my career in music and had done 10 years in the music industry, lost my job because Capital FM bought out Classic FM. So, ended up at the ICE working for the president. So one of my jobs was putting together a roundtable event for one of the presidents, Doug Oakervee, who's very well known in our industry. And this was the question they asked. And I think year upon year, time after time, we talk about STEM, we talk about going into schools, we talk about starting education early. But this is where this question zippers in with the other stuff. Because it's all very well doing those talks, but if you don't have those diverse role models and we don't shine a light on that via social media, via our recruitment processes, then those diverse children, those diverse little girls and boys, and however they might identify these days, they don't see a path. So something that I think is really important is actually storytelling and education. So I'm a music grad. I'm a girl from the Welsh Valleys, probably one of the 4 poorest areas in the United Kingdom. My dad died when I was a teen and I was his carer from the age of 12. So I didn't have a great start. And then I met an amazing male advocate at Betchel when I joined Betchel in 2005 who said, do you know what? I'm going to take a risk on you. So with that STEM lens, which I also had an interesting conversation recently with a lady called Alida Rios, and she's an SVP at BP, and she said, we're now talking more and more about STEAM. So STEM combined with the arts becomes STEAM. So this is something we're looking at more and more. How do we bring people from arts type backgrounds and take a risk in our apprenticeship schemes, in our graduate schemes, rather than simply fishing from the same pool. So the long and short, someone taking a risk on me with seemingly not at all the right kind of background, even from a STEM perspective, ended up in a board level position in a 22,000 employee business. So for me, STEM and STEAM, absolutely. Also internally in Betchel, we have something called MARC Dialogues, which is Men as Advocates for Real Change. And it's a brilliant program for people to sign up to and just talk about the realities. We've all been around those tables where we've been the only person who looks different or thinks differently. And it's having that opportunity to go, yep, that really happened. What happened to you, Scarlett, on site happened to me. I was running a 200 million tender, and a group of gentlemen decided to talk to my team who were significantly older than me. And it was only when we got back to the boardroom at the end and I handed my business card, they kind of went, after they'd given away their entire commercial strategy to the person who would be making the ultimate decision. So, the upshot of that was they will never do that again. But it's so important that we share those conversations and those microaggressions via teams like MARC Dialogues. So they're the things we do.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Ceri. I think that's what it is. It's this unconscious bias. I don't think, when these things happen, a lot of the time it's intentional. I think it's just they don't know what they don't know. And because there isn't that much visibility of women at the top, then when you do meet one, there's a lot of presumption that she's there to take the notes. So.
Absolutely. How many times have we been asked to order someone's train tickets or do some photocopying? It does happen.
Infuriating. Gaelle, I'll come to you with the same question.
No, I think the original question was around education, isn't it? And how do we get more women or anyone from underrepresented minorities to choose this as a career ultimately? And I think that we put a lot of pressure on young people, and anyone who's got children. I've got a son who's in year 10. It feels like already he's making life decisions. And I've got, he's just chosen his GCSEs, and already, he's a youngster, he was born in August. He's having to make decisions very shortly in the next 12 months on his A-levels, and really we're going from 9 to 3. So really at that stage, he's kind of making decisions, and we all went through it, didn't we? I'm a July baby. I made those decisions when I was 15, really on what A-levels I was going to take. What's really interesting is I met recently Dr. Sarah Williamson. If any of you know her, she's basically runs Sizewell C. She's a civil engineer. But she wasn't a civil engineer to start off with. At 18, because she did the arts, she was pushed down the route of, she says this quite openly, to be a secretary, not joking. She runs Sizewell C, she's got a PhD now. And ultimately, it was only because she realised that really wasn't what she wanted to do. She went and worked for her dad, who was a builder, for 2 years. And then she decided just to go to the local poly to do, very quietly, not want to tell anyone, her foundation course. And then she went from there, she went just from Preston, she went to Liverpool because that was just where she could go next. She then went to Liverpool to do her undergraduate, got a first in civil engineering. She then went to Birmingham and did a PhD. When she graduated, no one wanted to offer a job. She now finally found a contractor that would take her on. She's now one of the 5 most influential women in engineering in Europe. She also now runs Sizewell C, and she is the most humble and amazing person I've ever met. But the point was, she is an amazing civil engineer who at 15 didn't know what she wanted to do. And at 18, didn't know what she wanted to do. And at 21, finally thought, do you know what? I'll go back to uni quietly, and I'll go and do a foundation course. And now, thank God, she made that decision, because she now runs Sizewell. And she's one of the most amazing women I've ever met. So,
yeah, obviously it's a great point that you make, and a lot of people using transferable skills as well as retraining. It's really important, and expecting. I've got a 13-year-old, and he wants to be a rugby player at the minute. God knows what he'll end up being. But I just let him float through life, because he'll find his own way. I get that, but I don't think the education system at the minute is even on the radar. We're not even talking about construction. There are zero conversations happen in any that I know of in state schools or private schools where they're talking about construction. Maybe they're touching on engineering, actually, a private girls' school that I know. But otherwise, just in general, we're not speaking about it. So how are they ever going to know that, if I do this, then I can go into this career? I don't think the teachers even know what this is. And I think that's an issue that that we need to tackle? Scarlett?
So we partner with a school up in Hull that's called Rondeering UTC, and they specialise in engineering and tech, and there's some alignment as well to construction. But what they are is they're an employer-led school, so sponsored by big players within the industry that are basically cultivating, encouraging and educating literally the next generation of talent. And actually what I've seen them do has been truly wonderful. So I think that's something certainly that we could lean on within the construction industry. But just outside of education, if I may, I really do think there's a big place. It's great to encourage talent at grassroots level, and I'm all for that. But we work in senior execs, and to be honest, what I'm interested in seeing is diverse boardrooms, because then I know the businesses are going to be diverse, and seeing senior talent that is diverse. That's personally what I'm passionate about, and the reason for that is because that's when we see influential change happening in businesses. And I think a really good way of doing that, because there's one big thing we've not touched on, there's just not enough females in construction. So we can do as many adverts as we want, just talking about females, but we can do as many adverts as we want, and they can be as gender decoded as we want. But the reality is, as it stands at the moment as a sector, it isn't a very diverse sector. So what does the sector actually need to do to encourage and to entice diverse talent into sector? And I think one key thing is, aside from everything we've already said, is working with suppliers that are passionate about doing that. And I've seen some really great schemes. We are, by the way. And I've seen some really great schemes that actually targets not just the arts, I think that's a fantastic point, but also some other industries, and says, hey, there's some great transferable skills here. We're really interested in what you could bring to this party. Those kind of schemes can work really well to make quick results happen with proven people that are talented.
Brilliant. Thanks, Scarlett. I'm going to move on to the final question for you all, because this has gone faster than I thought, and I want to give the audience the opportunity to ask some questions as well. So, Carol, I'll start from you. We'll work our way down. Can you please give us your... Wow, I'm stood on my tiptoes. I should have worn high heels. Stupid flat shoes. Can you please give us your top tips on how to focus on EDIB within the recruitment process, and then we'll just work our way down and open it up to questions from the audience.
Really to focus on is, again, in the roles that you are recruiting, ensuring that you have people that are already doing the job. Also, networking groups like this and Women in Construction, where you can actually promote as an organisation that if you're employing a female into your organisation, that they are going to feel supported and valued in that role. Also, minorities as well, ensuring that you bring them into the roles that they know that they can not just stay stagnant at that role, but they have the opportunity to also climb that corporate ladder. I didn't get the opportunity when I was starting to have anyone or peers that I could look at up to. So again, it's, we've got some great female here, but we've also got some great allies in male as well. This is not about beating up, the white middle-aged man or the grey-hair man or the men that are in construction just looking after themselves. It's all about just tapping into that knowledge that they have to help bring more into the sector. We know there's a massive skill shortage, and we need to ensure that, with age comes knowledge. I've been in the sector 36 years and more, so I want to impart my knowledge to the next generation, starting from the schools and the university, to help bring them in.
Brilliant. Thanks, Carol. 36 years. You're still looking fresh. As a long
You could be my daughter, Michaela.
Ceri, to
For me, I think it's about not just assuming that it's down to recruitment and the recruiters. As businesses, we have an absolute duty to work with recruiters and then embed those philosophies and those lessons learned back into our businesses, build business infrastructures that will fit diverse individuals, put our money where our mouth is and walk the walk, because we all know everyone's got those targets out there, but the reality is when you try to talk the talk, you don't have enough days holiday, good enough maternity and paternity benefits. So to give an example here, bringing it back to not just being about women, My husband and I operate at the same level, business-wise, and we have a 3-year-old. So I decided to get pregnant at 45 years old. So we were both already pretty senior. My business had an infrastructure to support me, but his did not have an infrastructure to support him. So then what happens? By default, you become the lagging spouse because you're the only one who can do it. So again, recruitment-wise, I think we need to also focus on having policies that allow men or parents of any kind, any gender, to take time out and have flex in order to really create a level playing field for diversity.
Yeah, I love that you've said that, actually, Ceri. I completely agree. And I think it's not spoken about enough, especially from women, because you're like, oh, hold on to the little privilege that we have. But it's actually really important to then balance it out. I went with both my children. I was back to work after 2 weeks. So it would have been nice for our parents to have stayed at home with them. But
exactly, because you're so used to catching those balls that, so to speak. But, you know, Saj, who works in my team, he's got 3 kids under 5. My boss has 2 under 5. So I'm in a really fortunate position where we all have the same issues. So I talk a lot about, you know, in recruitment, we need to ask questions about what are people's red lines? What are they? Are they childcare? Are they parental care? Are they other needs that are governed by diverse personalities? But we need to honour those red lines, not just when we recruit people, but ongoing from a business perspective.
Well, thanks, Ceri. And Gaelle?
So everybody here in this crowd, I'm assuming that you're here because you work in construction. I'm just taking a wild guess, right? So we're all invested, aren't we? And I think what we've realised here is the problem, we've all talked about the solutions once we have the candidates. The real problem is people are not choosing us as an industry. People are not choosing us. And yet, guess what we do? We make sure they've got clean water every time they turn their tap on. We make sure they've got homes to live in. We make sure that they've got schools to go to school in, hospitals where people can get well, and places where people can socialise. We impact every single day. We've got an amazing story as an industry. But when was the last time you all told that story to a school? When was the last time you or your organisation volunteered to your local school and spoke to them about your industry, this industry that we're all invested in? Now, I'm feeling a bit smug today because I know I'm going to Tonbridge School in June, and I am going to go and speak to some school kids, and I'm going to use my volunteer day at work to go and do that. So I'm just saying that, but is that honestly, it's the first time I've ever done it, and I'm 22 years in the industry. I feel a little bit ashamed about that because I should have done this way earlier. So all I would say is please play it forward. If you care about this industry, go and volunteer, go and spend a day. All of us can do it. Spend a few hours at an assembly and just tell them it's not all about muddy boots on site. I love muddy boots on site. But it's not just that. There's lots of jobs in this industry, and we can all commit to doing that. 1 hour, once a year, go to a school and show them you don't need to be a certain type of person. This is a home for everybody. Everybody is welcome in construction and property, but we need to make them believe that.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Gaelle. And Scarlett?
I'll make mine snappy, 'cause that was hard to follow. I think something that's really impactful very quickly and very tangible is only accepting diverse shortlists. So unless the shortlist that you're looking at of candidates or interviews that you're having, unless there's diversity within those interviews, we need to just keep going until we make sure that that's actually what we're seeing. And the reason that I say that is because I wholeheartedly believe with you, Carol, we need to bring the right people into the business. That's it. The best person needs to be in the best position. It's as simple as that. However, what it enables us to do is to look at different options, to look at different types of people, to obviously encourage different people into our industry, but it also presents some of our internal talent teams, our line managers, our external recruitment suppliers to make sure that what can they do, what can they bring to the table, how can they go about this and look at some problem-solving techniques to do so. So that's something that I've seen has made the biggest impact in the quickest way and the most effective way.
Oh, do you know what? Thank you all so much. Do you know what I love is that it's all really practical. I sometimes feel like I'm speaking in an echo chamber anyway, so thank you to all the men who have come along because I know we're predominantly talking about women here. But there's always the problem. It's always somebody saying, oh, this. Like, we know, we get it. I've been having this conversation 15 years, we understand. But what I really appreciate from the panel today is actually providing solutions like this is how you can overcome this. And it's really important. As an industry, we are based all around solutions. So we really need to make sure that's part of every topic of conversation that we have as well. So don't want to make this about me. So I'll open it up to the audience if anybody has any questions. Is there going to be a brave first person? Yes, thank you.
Hi, thank you all for your time and really interesting discussion. I'm not actually in construction, so I came to find out a bit more about kind of looking into this as a career option. And I know a few of you have mentioned how kind of looking into less typical routes or people who might be interested in the industry. I think for me, kind of relating to what you, Michaela, said about your son, not really knowing what they want to do at a young age. I find that a lot of people, so I'm 27, and a lot of people around my age might have already had a few, already kind of started a career or had a few different jobs. And so around this age or around this point, it might be look a little bit impenetrable to kind of come into the industry. So I was just kind of interested to find if there are any recommendations or particular routes that are recommended to people kind of who are looking to make career changes and might not have experience already in construction or the built environment.
Ceri?
I actually was 29 when I changed career. So I remember having a pivot point where I kind of thought, gosh, I'm too old to have a second career. And by luck, obviously, I met the person that I met at Betchel. But for me, I think it's never too late. I kind of worked full-time, did a foundation in maths, and then did a master's in quantity surveying while I was running an essentially 200 million rail depot. And I think there's a lot about self-belief. You know, when you get to that point, there's a lot of water under the bridge, whether you've had children, whether you haven't, whatever path you've taken, it can get to the point where you think, gosh, this is going to be really hard. I would say from the point I was a PA to the point I was, successfully closing out that job, and we won 4 British Construction Industry Awards for that job. We delivered it, I think, 7 months early, 33 million under budget, lots of accolades, which is amazing, right? That was 3 years after being a PA. So I would just say there is no obstacle apart from your own self-belief. And, certainly I'm sure I can speak for all of us up here. If you want any mentoring, coaching, anyone to hold your hand and kind of take you through the various steps, there are many, which I'm sure the others will talk about. But ultimately, just know, whatever walk of life you've led up to this point, the world's your oyster right now.
Oh, lovely, thanks. And thanks, Ceri, that was brilliant. Is there anybody else who has any practical tips where we can tell her like how to actually get into construction? First steps.
There's so many big organisations do apprenticeships. That would be the biggest thing I would say.
We do, so
they really
apply.
Do. Absolutely. Go and have a look at all the big tier 1 contractors and just type in construction apprenticeships. And there's loads of different, I'm hearing every day of new like sandwich courses, skinny sandwich courses. I don't know what that is. But effectively, a lot of the time it's you can study and work, because that's the big thing, isn't it? Because of the cost of living now, a lot of people can't afford to go into full-time education. You need to be paid while you're skilled. And the good thing is there's lots of organisations within the construction and built environment sector who will pay for you to work and study at the same time. So if you just go and Google construction apprenticeships contractors, then you'll find there'll be lots and lots of courses, thank goodness. And there's a lot of employers who are absolutely happy to help to reskill you. And thank goodness they are, because that's what we're going to need as an industry. So honestly, we want you to do this. Please do. Please go and Google it.
Desperation from Gaelle on that note. Right, I'm going to leave it there because we are running over. So thank you all for coming and listening. But thank you to the amazing panel for taking the time out to speak to us. Cheers.